will call to order this meeting of the Murphysboro City Council. I ask you to all rise. We have with us this evening Pastor Martin.
That they move toward one another for the good of the city and not against. I ask that you give them your wisdom to make decisions that will be edifying for all. Bless them now, bless everything they represent and that is connected to them, and grant them traveling mercies on their way home. It's in the matchless name of Jesus the Christ we pray and give thanks. And God's people said,
Amen. Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Contractor, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Hughes. Alderman Curry Witzman. Alderman Runge.
Here.
Alderman Austin. Alderman Jackson. Here. Alderman Pittman.
Here.
Alderman Urbis.
Here.
Alderman McComb.
Here.
Alderman Ritchie. Alderman Glad.
Here. Before we get into the consideration of minutes, I just asked everybody to look up Miss Hughes. Her sister passed away earlier today. I'm sorry, Sandra?
Last night.
Oh, it was last night, okay. Recently, and so she's not in family matters, of course. We think about her this evening. With that being said, we have the consideration of council minutes to consider from November the 21st, 2023. Is there any questions or amendments to the minutes?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to our regular committee and commission reports. First, we, of course, have budget.
Thank you, Mayor. We have no items under old business. Under new business, we have consideration of accounts payable, accounts receivable, and payroll register. Anybody have any questions regarding the bill? Hearing none, entertain a motion to pay the bill.
Second.
Motion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is presentation of financial reports. Prepared by Scott Evans. Scott.
Thank you, WJ. So tonight, I'll start with the income tax report. You'll see that in November we received $82,795, which is $10,000 more than this time last year, considerably above the 8-year average, and continues to defy logic in my mind, but so be it. We have exceeded budget now through 11 months, so clearly adding one more month to that will just add to that overage. So that's been a really pleasant surprise this year. And I was hoping to have the sales tax report that I usually do, but the state has not vouchered that yet. Probably will be tomorrow, which, doesn't help us tonight, but as soon as that's vouchered, I'll have that for you at the next meeting. So the health insurance report, or health care cost report, I should say, on the next page. For the month of November, we spent $45,621. So cumulatively through 11 months, we have spent $416,593 in general fund and $99,775 in water sewer, for a total of $516. So even if December is a really ridiculously high month, let's say in the HRA, I think we're easily going to be within budget. If you look at the HRA usage this year, we've had a couple high months, but overall, what we've spent is right around 26 to 27% of what the maximum could be. And that maximum would be if every single employee maxed out every deductible that they had, which apparently is statistically improbable. And and we typically budget somewhere around a little over 50%. So we actually, had a really good year as far as utilization, which means I guess people didn't go to the doctors and hospitals as much, which is good for them too, I guess, obviously. And so we've had just a pretty good year with the program we have in place this year. So that's where we're at through 11 months. The schedule of operating expenses by department. So through 11 months, now again, this is just general fund, we have spent $6,108,000, and we have budgeted for $6,782,000, difference of $673,000 that hasn't been spent, and our revenues are $6,463,000, and we have budgeted $5,898,000, so we're running ahead of estimates on our revenues, and we haven't spent all the ARPA money that we intended to spend, or budgeted, say, and so that's why you see the surplus that it is. That's almost exactly what the amount we haven't spent on the ARPA project yet is, about $350,000. So, which is something that we'll deal with on Thursday night when we do the budgeting process. Sandra and I had to kind of think that through and say, okay, what have we spent? What are we going to spend? What's going to be next year? And so we'll talk about that as far as spending the rest of those dollars. But anyway, we do have a surplus through the 11 months, and I would think barring something unusual, we should hold that surplus because, again, we're not going to spend that $350,000 yet this year. Should end the year in pretty good shape. And the last, it's a 3-page report showing the salaries by department, and of course this does include water, sewer, and also tourism and civil defense, or EMA. And since November was a month when we had 3 payrolls, you'll see that we budgeted $324,000 for the month, or just any average month, and we spent $491,375, which is basically 3 payrolls. So obviously we knew that was coming, and we kind of had it baked into the cake ahead of time. So we have a overage of $167,000 for the month, but if you look at the year-to-date through 11 months, we still have $56,000 surplus, I guess you'll call it, or underage in our payroll versus what we budgeted. And I don't think there's any major surprises in any of the departments that we haven't talked about already throughout the course of the year. So that's all the reports, I guess. So any questions?
Is there a reason why administration is $250,000 under budget?
You mean going back to the other report?
Yeah.
Making up most of that. Yeah.
I was, talking about the third page, technically, City of Murphysboro General Fund Schedule of Operating
Yeah.
Expenses.
Yeah, we budgeted for that ARPA money to be, all spent this year in the administration line, and we just haven't and won't until next year, the rest of it, so.
Okay, so, and I'm asking dumb questions here, so the $100,000 difference between the bottom line surplus versus deficit versus the amount that's hitting the administration line, just help clarify my ignorance here, Scott.
Well, the ARPA unspent.
Oh, okay.
It's within $5,000 of that number, so I mean, I think that's just coincidental. We had a lot of things, pretty much across the board, most of our departments, except city clerk and accounts payable, is under budget. And then, again, that one kind of is a timing issue. We paid a lot of those insurances quarterly, so that's under or over budget just simply because we probably charged something in November that will somewhat catch up in December. So yeah. it's just a lot of moving pieces that just happen to be that number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Next item is consideration of tax levy. Scott, are you,
Oh, sorry. We're up next.
tax levy, how, compared to last year, what's the difference?
It is exactly the same. No raise.
No increase.
Nope.
Does anybody have any questions? We have motion of approval for the new ordinance for the new tax levy. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And that's the last item under new business during public comment and voting time. Move that over.
Thank you, WJ. That takes us to Building and Grounds, chaired by Mr. Mike Austin. In his absence, I'll handle these items. We have no old business. Under new business, we have a discussion regarding engagement with Phelps, Berry, and Associates. I'll preface this item by saying that in previous council meetings, I have referenced the fact that there was $1 million put into the Illinois budget for the construction of a new police fire, city hall, city of Murphysboro. And I've been waiting for that money to be released, and it has not been released. And so I started asking questions, and my primary source of good information is Deputy Governor Andy Menard. And Andy Menard told me that, you know, my $1 million very well may be in the budget, but that the House of Representatives inserted $1 billion more projects in the budget than there was money to pay for them. And so essentially, there's a queue of people that are in line. The state has $4, and there are $5 worth of requests. You want to make it, you know, just real simple numbers. And one of the ways to perhaps get that money released and perhaps get additional money for the city, for our building project, would be to engage with a lobbyist. Phelps, Berry and Associates is Brandon Phelps, who is a former state rep. His father, or his uncle rather, was a congressman. His niece is the current director of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. I've talked with several state representatives, asked them, you know, what they thought about this approach for the city of Murphysboro. Patrick Windhorst, Terry Bryant, both said that there were a lot of municipalities that had, you know, lobbyists on, you know, contract terms, whatever. Some of them on retainer for years, some of them are just hired temporarily. So it's my suggestion that we consider engaging with them. First question, of course, is how much does it cost? And I've been quoted a price of a 6-month contract at $3,000 a month, $18,000. And that contract has a clause in it that has a 30-day out. So if at any time along the way, for whatever reason we feel like we're not, you know, getting our money's worth, we can terminate that. So I want to put this to the council for consideration because I want to explore every avenue for getting funding for this building before we, you know, have a consideration at some point, sales tax or something to build the building, because we need to build a building, but I want to pursue every other option before I do that. So I open it up to council for thoughts.
That's pretty much the same that we're leasing Spears Building to the county for, correct?
Well, I don't actually, have already forgotten those numbers. What are we getting from the county?
That's $30,000 a year or $36,000, something like
I thought it
that.
was $3,000 a month, dropped from $3,500 to $3,000 like that.
Yeah, that's about right, I think.
So it's,
Is it 2,500? 2,500.
yeah, I thought CJ had negotiated that down.
30,000.
Right. Mr. Urbis?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly, I think it's a good idea. Do you know, a skeptic that I am, if they are representing any other municipalities or groups that are wanting money released?
They are not representing any other municipality. I know they represent Ameren, Illinois. I know they represent the Southern Illinois Builders Association. Those are the only two clients I know for sure. But in talking with Brandon Phelps, he said that they would like to get this contract because no other communities in Southern Illinois engage with lobbyists. I mean, and when I talked to Patrick Windhorst about it, he says, it seems like every town north of Springfield to Chicago has somebody wandering around the Capitol building trying to, you know, tell us how important their project is. It's just not something that's ever done in our area. And I realize the word lobbyist has kind of leaves a nasty taste in your mouth, right? But they're only a lobbyist if they're working for somebody else other than you, right? If they're working for you, they're an advocate. Right. So,
Well, and, you know, I think you've uncovered you've done a lot to uncover what you've uncovered and find out what you found. And I think the next step is to get somebody else in the trenches for it.
Brandon is pretty well known up there too, you know.
well, I spent some time with him when I was in Springfield working on the Southwest Connector project. And if it wasn't for him, I would not have gotten, you know, a multitude of the meetings that I've gotten. So, anyway, and again, we don't have an agreement in front of us. Their agreement is just essentially like a two-page thing that I would obviously have our attorney review before we signed off on it. Mr. Rum?
Would this be for this current year's budget that we're trying to get the money from, or the next one? So,
Well, it's interesting because these requests, and I don't know exactly why, but they are carried over year to year. And so even though this request was in current year's budget, if you go open up the Illinois budget and read the whole thing, there's requests in there from 2016, 2017 that are just, nobody's ever demanded it be, isn't released. So much of this is that representatives put in the budgets, yeah, that they know will never get appropriated, so that they can go back to their districts and say, you know, I've got $500,000 in the budget for whatever, and then after the headline fades, nobody ever follows up on it, and it's just there.
It's the other party's fault if we don't get it.
Right. It's a screwy business.
I mean, in my mind, it almost nets out what we're getting from the
Yeah,
Spears Building heating.
How much are they a month for?
3,000. And that was not that's a negotiated number, I guess I would say. Mr. Glenn?
In your discussions with Brandon, how did he feel about moving on this on our behalf? Did he think that?
Well, the one thing that he said that stood out to me was he said, Richard Martin, you know, who was a Murphysboro firefighter for a long time and was a lobbyist for the Firefighters Association, was one of the best known people in Springfield. And he said, Richard always told me, living or dead, Brandon, if you could use me, use me. And he said, I think that I can go to, I could probably get 60 sponsors on a bill to help fund your fire department if it's the Richard Martin Memorial Fire Department, because everybody up here absolutely loves it. And I said, well, and that makes sense to me, because I can tell you, when we did that little resolution to make Murphysboro the barbecue capital of Illinois, I drove 118 bottles of barbecue rub, 118 bottles of sauce, and 118 barbecue bulls up there. And Richard took a push cart and went with me and pushed them to every single state rep door in the Capitol building with me. And the minute he walked in the door, I didn't care who I was. but they were wanting to know, who he was. And, he actually waved my vehicle underneath the Capitol building through security so we could take all that stuff up in an elevator when I was gonna have to try to push it up some. So I know that, he's not BSing me on that. So.
Maybe we should send him
You
some
need a
barbecue.
motion to try that.
I would like to move forward pending the review of our attorney of the agreement.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Same thing.
Motion carries. Do we have any public comment? That'll take us to community relations. Ms. Curry Witzman's absence. We have no old business. We have no new business. Do we have any public comment on community relations? All right, come out of that. We'll go to public improvement. Chair by Mr. Don Black. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no old business, there's no new business. Is there any public comment? Which I would like to make a comment. No, I'm just elated that people on North 7th Street will have a regular winter time this year.
Yes.
And thanks for the report, and I drove through there the other day and I saw them filling in the gaps in the holes. So,
Slowly.
Finally, yeah.
oh yeah, slowly.
And believe it or not, that contract probably extends into next year because IDOT counts counting, they quit counting working days November 1st through the end of, I think, April. So, by contract, but they say they're going to be done this year, so.
Tell them a check's in the mail.
Yeah.
Back to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
That's Gary McCall. Gary?
Yeah, there's no old business, and under new business, consideration of motor fuel general maintenance resolution for 2024. Harold?
So this is every year. We did meet with the city, and there are some things in there. This is a little bit higher than normal, but we do have the Blair Street project that didn't get completed last year. I know you did an authorization for that money, but we'll have to do it again. And also Darren's got a pretty good culvert project that he wants to do. So there's $60,000 worth of culverts that we'll have to take bids on those culverts too. So. But this is just something the city does every year in December.
All right.
Is there any questions on that? None, I entertain a motion to accept it.
So moved.
All in favor? Nay? Ayes have it. Is there any public comments on the public works? Hearing none, there we'll move that.
Thank you, Gary. That takes us to public safety. Chair by Mr. John Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor. No old business, but one item of new business, consideration of ordinance amending certain sections of chapter 3 animals. I read through it, but I didn't know what was new, so.
I can go over what's new. These are in working with Animal Control Officer Tincher. He had noticed that there were certain sections in the animal code that make reference to other sections that were incorrect. And he sat down to go through and identify those are incorrect. And then after, going through that, some revisions that he also had to suggest. I'll go through the two big changes that involved in what we have here. Under what would be section 3-1-15, nuisance declared destruction of animal. That provision used to provide that if there is a certain animal, there's conviction regarding that animal of what referred to as prohibited acts under the animal code, that then this section would apply, that the animal would be considered a nuisance and would have to be removed from the city. What's been changed here is rather than limiting to just what's referred to as prohibited acts, and what's the point that we see tickets written on, are these animals that may approach somebody in a threatening manner or attack a person or another animal or bite somebody. There are less serious offenses such as running at large or we have owners that don't really care if they're written a ticket for running at large, they don't show up for court, they don't pay the fines, they let the fines be turned over to collection, there's no real penalty going to the persons because they just don't care. So we added in here that if it's a conviction of any different section of the animal code, it's designed for dealing with some of these people with animals that are just repeat offenders and just really become a nuisance because their owners just let them run and don't really do anything to control them. So that's the purpose of the amendment to section 3-1-15. Of course, there would be a question of enforcement. If they have the 3 violations, they refuse to remove the animal themselves, we would have to take action to get a court order to have that animal removed. But it's something just to give our animal control officer a little more something to work with those animals that the owners are just not really keeping them under control. The other would be under the penalty section. He had just gone through and updated, increased those offenses by $50 each for first offense, second offense, and then subsequent offenses. Went from 100 to 150, then 200 to 250, 300 to 350. The other language in here is just cleaning up some of the language referencing section numbers and other things that he saw that were incorrect in the code.
Quick question, Richard, is there any kind of a time frame going back to 3/115 on the 3 separate occasions?
We do not have one. We could insert one. I didn't really discuss that with Officer Tincher. How far back we look, it would...
I mean, if they're months apart, years
Right.
apart, I mean,
That's a big difference.
it is a big difference.
Yeah. I can go back and discuss that with him if you'd like.
I think that's a worthwhile amendment to consider.
I think there ought to be some kind of a time frame in there.
Okay. I'll go back and speak with Officer Tincher and come back with something else to propose on that point.
Good. So in effect, we're going to table it right now.
I believe so, yes.
Thank you, Richard. So even though it says that it can be removed by the animal control officer, you still have to get court order.
If the right, it would just be the same as if somebody's going to say, you're not coming in my house to remove my animal.
So this is really when the owners are more of a nuisance than the animals.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Any public comment?
Thank you, John. That takes us to personnel. We have no old business. Under new business, we have consideration of ordinance regarding the Illinois Paid Leave for All Workers Act. Mr. Blake, you want to speak to this?
And I don't know if anybody, it's new legislation that will go into effect January 1st, 2024. It basically requires for an employee, for every 40 hours worked, they get an hour of paid leave, up to 40 hours of paid leave during the year. There are other provisions, as far as the paid leave, it would be paid leave that an employee can take they don't have to have a reason to be off, to provide documentation to be off, it's something that, as far as giving notice, if they have advance notice, they're supposed to give 7 days advance notice. If they don't give notice, they can take off immediately for whatever reason they would want. Of course, the city already has paid leave provided under collective bargaining agreements and under the city personnel code. The ordinance that's in your packet has been based on a model ordinance prepared by the Illinois Municipal League. There's two. It will do two things. Rather than amending the personnel code to address the statutory requirements for paid leave, and also then the future we're making revisions to the various collective bargaining, them in compliance with the specifics of the Paid Leave Act. It first will, number one, there is language in the Paid Leave for All Workers Act that says if there is a municipal ordinance or a county ordinance in effect that adopts a current paid leave policy prior to the effective date of the act, that will be the city's or if we're a county, their paid leave policy. So by this ordinance, it does that. It's also the opinion of the Illinois Municipal League that as a home rule municipality, there is no provision that would prevent a municipality, a home rule municipality, from altogether opting out of the requirements of the Paid Leave Act. So this ordinance does two things. It opts out of the Paid Leave for All Workers Act under home rule authority. It also adopts the personnel code and all collective bargaining agreements and those paid leave policies that are set forth therein as the city's paid leave policy. So, this will do that. It will, the current policies for paid leave, or as they're amended, will be the city's paid leave policies. We could go the route, go and amend the personnel code to either get paid leave or go back and amend and take away 7 days, take 7 days of paid leave or 7 days of vacation days and label them as paid leave under this policy, and then do the same with future collective bargaining agreements. So this ordinance is a means by which those requirements of the Paid Leave Act will not have to be complied with by the city under those two approaches, either both one opting out under home rule authority, number two, current paid leave policies, which the city has for all of the collective bargaining agreements, personnel policy for those full-time employees not covered there. So, or the other option would be for us to go back and then amend those policies. So this is an ordinance, if the city is going to do so, it will need to pass this ordinance this year, before January 1st. I hope that was clear and not just confusing.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I just have one question. So I tried to read some of it because I was kind of shocked by it. I guess I shouldn't have been, but I wasn't. So if we provide as much or more than this, we don't have to do the additional, is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well put, John.
Yeah. So the only time if we had like a temporary speed worker or something, or something like that.
The city is also opting out.
Right, but if we did not.
Right, if we did.
Okay, thank you.
Because the act will apply to farm workers, temporary workers, any. So, and then for every 40 hours they work, they get an hour of paid leave off.
It looks like to me it's going to impact much more so a place like a party.
Yes.
It's going to impact everybody.
Yeah.
Changing, just changing the policy to account for it is
Right.
significant time and everything.
Well, most probably there's no penalty if they just don't show up. It's like, oh, I took my leave.
And if after the first, do that the first hour of their next shift, they can skip the first hour. They'll see people do that.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, if there's no public comment, we'll go to the mayor's report. I'm going to table the tourism board ordinance discussion because I just today had a sit down with Lisa Miller and forwarded in my mail to Richard Blake today that essentially outlines, codifying what they're already doing and then what we've already been doing for quite some time. Back at our next meeting. Just a reminder on the budget meeting set for Thursday, at least so on 4 p.m. So if you could take care of that, that would be great. So we can try to get our spending together.
About 5 minutes late.
With that, we'll go to council member requests from Mr. Bunn.
I don't have any, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Jackson,
Thank you.
Mr. Hunziker,
Thank you.
Mr. Pittman, Mr. Urbis, Mr. McCall,
Nothing, thank you.
Glad.
Let's remember Friday night. Christmas party.
Oh, yes. Thank you for that reminder. Sandra's probably not going to have anything now. Mr. Blake?
One thing, on the annual budget, we have gone ahead and published notice that the hearing on the annual budget will be the next city council meeting, the 19th at 5:45.
Okay.
So we better get it lined out Thursday night, is what you're saying?
Yes, it does provide, it will be available for inspection beginning December 8th.
Okay. Ms. Ripley?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Evans?
Nothing, thank you.
Chief McBride?
Nothing, thanks.
Kellmeyer?
Nothing.
Mr. Manwaring?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Shepherd?
Nothing.
Ms. Volley?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Lee? Mr. Iser?
Nothing.
Mr. Gladson? Mr. Mills? We are adjourned.